Hello, I'm Adrian Ashton, and welcome to this session thinking about how you as trustees meet with other people. So this is part of the theme about meetings and how trustees meet together and make decisions together and act together. But specifically, should you meet with people who are not trustees? How often should you do this? Should they be involved in your meetings and decision making? Or should you just simply keep it to yourself? You're a trustee, it's a voluntary role. We've clarified through some of the other sessions in this induction video series that you need to be insulated in some way. You need to avoid conflicts of interest. You need to be objective. So actually mixing up with too many other people could compromise that. So the idea of this session is to help you think through some of those questions and issues and challenges, and hopefully come up with some decisions that suit you and work for your charity as we go through this. So let's kind of stick with actually the structural, practical, legal things for now, as we stick with. In an organization, there are lines of reporting, chain of command, if you will. Trustees, as we've said, you're there to keep a view on that bigger picture, the governance, the strategic direction, not to get caught up with the operational day-to-day management issues. That's why there are employed or volunteer paid managers to do that stuff. So volunteers or employees do the day-to-day, so you as trustees can remain objective and keep your focus on the big picture, the strategic issues. The way that that usually works out in practice is, as trustees, you recruit the manager to the charity. And in turn, that manager reports to you, you line manage them, and the manager then subsequently recruits and line manages paid staff and other volunteers. So as trustees, you support the manager and the manager supports everyone else. That's the traditional structure, how this works. And there are lots of arguments that are usually advocated as to why, as trustees, you should be insulated. You shouldn't be getting involved or inviting people who are volunteers or other people who are employed in the charity who aren't the manager in your meetings and discussions. And we've already touched on one of those. It's about lines of communication, lines of reporting. If the manager reports to the trustees and other employees and volunteers report to the manager, if those employees and volunteers start reporting to you as trustees, where does that leave the manager? What's their job? And it starts to cause a bit of confusion and undermines people. It also means that there's a risk that as you start hearing the stories and the concerns and the ideas of people who are doing the day-to-day, you get quite excited by that, understandably so. But the risk is you then get more excited and interested in that stuff, the day-to-day, than the strategic stuff. And that means you start to run the risk of drifting into micromanagement, which again undermines the manager who you've recruited to put in place. It also means that spending time having these wider discussions with people, remember, you're here in a voluntary capacity. There's only so many hours you have collectively and individually. So that takes out time for you to be able to do your role and duties as a trustee. So there's all sorts of reasons why we go, yep, absolutely, let's keep some clear boundaries. No problem. However, I would like to suggest to you that there are some very good reasons why we should actually think about making contact and engaging other paid staff and volunteers. Because if you are isolated from people who are other than the manager, it's quite easy to lose touch. You're only hearing the view of the manager. And I don't wish to cast aspersions on anyone you employ or anyone in the charity. But it can be useful sometimes just to get a sounding board to say, okay, we think this is what's going on. Let's just hear some stories from volunteers and other paid staff in the project teams, just to kind of make sure this is actually all what we think it is. It's a reality checkpoint. It's a check-in with people. That's pretty good. In some of the other sessions that we've done in this series, we've talked about the culture of the charity. making it a place where people feel they can give their best, people feel trusted and valued, and that people are interested in them. So as trustees, if you have direct contact with other paid staff and volunteers, that's a huge encouragement to them that you're taking an interest in them, and that builds the culture of the charity in good ways. It also means because you're having those conversations, you're getting fresh perspectives that can spark new ideas. That means people are kind of more interested in giving more. People are going to stick with it. People are maybe who might have been thinking about, oh, I'm not quite sure if I should stay or maybe do something else now. Oh, the trustees are interested in me. Maybe I am valued here. I am appreciated. It's a positive culture. People refresh their commitment, renew their interest in being part of the charity. And then through those conversations, it sparks new ideas and things that you might otherwise have missed. So that's actually quite a good reason that as trustees, you should be checking in with everyone in the charity from time to time. But how to best do that, how to best manage it and structure it, because as we've already picked up, it takes time. It can cause confusion. So how do we manage those things out of the way? Well, there's a few ideas I want to suggest and share with you here. Maybe part of it is the way that the agenda is structured for your trustee meetings. Now, again, in some of the other sessions that we've done in this, we've talked about the agenda and how it doesn't just have to be the order of business. Look at the management accounts, review the safeguarding policies, whatever it is. Actually, there could be part of that agenda which says there is an invitation at every meeting for a paid member of staff or a volunteer, or 2 or 3 of them, to be invited to the meeting just to do a quick show and tell as to what their role is in the charity and how they're experiencing it and what they're feeling and thinking. So it creates a bit of a framework and structure to do that. It could be reversed as well. So from time to time, volunteers will have collective team meetings. Project staff will have team meetings as well. So it may be that part of their standing agendas is one of your number as the trustees can be invited to go and join them, just to sit in, to get an insight, to have that kind of from the front line reporting. You could stage events, sort of consultation type things. You could say, no, as trustees, these are the options that we're looking at. It's maybe a difficult decision, and we've touched upon difficult decision making in another series in this video set. But it could be that you say, you know, there's some difficult decisions. We think this is what we're going to do and why, but we just want to get the views of everyone else first before we finally commit to it. That's okay too. And then there's the ongoing, more informal, relational stuff, which again contributes to the culture. It may be that when we've touched upon training and development for trustees, paid staff, volunteers will, on an ongoing basis, be having or should be having opportunities for training, development, learning activities. Now, why not as trustees? Why don't you sit in on those? If there's funded places on them, why don't you share in those? Learn together, because that would potentially really help, because a volunteer does the training and thinks about what it means in their role as a volunteer. You're doing it alongside them as a trustee and thinking about what does that mean in your role as a trustee. And because you're doing it side by side together, you as a trustee get a better appreciation and an insight and an understanding of the world of the volunteers. And the volunteers get a better understanding of who you are as trustees and your role and where you fit in, so you can work together better into the future. So it just needs a bit of planning and a bit of thought. And there's a lot of benefits it can generate. So that's thinking in short session there, thinking about how as trustees you have contact with people inside the charity other than the manager. But as with all of these video shorts and sessions, this one is part of a wider set. This one falls in the set about meetings, and within the other ones, if you haven't already gone through them, we talked about and covered communication, the way that we talk and share information and dialogue with people in different ways, things that can go wrong in that, and how we can make sure it's working well. We've got a session that looks at how we can make difficult decisions, those times when the only 2 options we've got, damned if we do and damned if we don't. How do we kind of best work the path between them, and in a way that we can stand by in the future? And then finally, difficult conversations, those times when it's not quite working out with someone, or we need to air this. We need to kind of get it out in the open, but it's going to be painful. It's going to be embarrassing. It's not going to be pleasant. So those are the ones we've got in this series set. Hopefully, though, from this one about thinking about as trustees, how you engage with volunteers and paid staff other than managers, there's been something there that's provoked you and prompted you to think again, something you found of encouragement and interest, and something that you can practically use now to further support you and give you a bit more confidence in your role as a trustee. Thanks for listening.